Hi an alle da draußen, vielen, vielen Dank, dass ihr heute wieder eingeschaltet habt. Bevor wir in die heutige Folge mit Max starten, wollte ich nochmal ganz kurz über unsere Gruppe auf Facebook sprechen. Als Dennis und ich vor 2-3 Monaten die gegründet haben, wussten wir nicht, wo es hingeht. Wir hatten einfach beide diesen Drang, einen Ort zu schaffen, wo einfach alle aus der Branche sich connecten können, man sich austauschen kann, weil es einfach so einen Ort in Deutschland nicht gab. Und wir wussten nicht, wie die Resonanz so ist, wie viele Leute beitreten werden, wie schnell die Gruppe wachsen wird. Und zu sehen, dass innerhalb von kürzester Zeit jetzt schon fast 200 Menschen in der Gruppe sind und täglich neue Menschen dazukommen, das ist einfach der Wahnsinn für uns. Und wir freuen uns jeden Tag über den Austausch dort und über alle neuen Leute, die dazukommen. Viel Spaß mit der heutigen Episode.
The only time you push that boost post button is when you have too many euros and you don't know what to do with them and you want to just gift them to Facebook. That's when you push. If you're having so many euros and there's no room in your wallet and there's no room in your bank account and you just want to get rid of some, that's the way to go. But generally speaking, I wish there wasn't a boost post button because it's so misleading. It makes it feel like, oh, I can just click this button and, I spend maybe 10, 15, 20 euros and I'll book a wedding. But that's not true. Sure, it could happen, but that would be like winning a lottery. Like that could happen as well.
Das war Max Sadik, heute zu Gast im Hochzeitsvideografie-Podcast. Max ist Hochzeitsfotograf und Facebook-Marketing-Experte und hat sich darauf spezialisiert, anderen Dienstleistern aus der Branche zu helfen, durch Facebook-Werbung und Instagram-Werbung sich zu vermarkten, Monate im Voraus ausgebucht zu sein und ein glücklicheres Leben dadurch zu führen. In der heutigen Episode sprechen wir mit ihm über den Facebook-Werbeanzeigen-Manager, ob es Sinn macht, den Bewerben-Button auf Instagram zu nutzen, wie ein Verkaufsfunnel für Hochzeitsvideografen aussehen könnte und warum wir uns nicht als den Hero sehen sollten, sondern als den Guide und wie sich das auf die Webseitenerstellung auswirkt. Dennis und ich sind selbst bei Max im Einzelcoaching und konnten von seinem unglaublichen Wissen profitieren. Deswegen, ich freue mich mega, heute mit ihm zu sprechen. Hi Max, thanks that you're here.
Cool. Yeah, definitely. Well, first of all, it's good to see you again. And thanks for having me on the podcast. It's one of my favorite things to do is to be able to share some of the info in a kind of informal and relaxed setting that a podcast offers. So it's definitely one of my favorite things to do. So like you said, my name is Max Sadik and I live in Southern California. And basically, I've kind of devoted the last few years of my life specifically to helping photographers and videographers who do weddings market themselves. Now, I've worked with other wedding vendors and I've worked beyond the wedding industry with photographers and videographers who do other work. But my passion is really, for some reason, specifically with photo and video in the wedding industry. I find it to be, I know other videographers and photographers would get upset if they heard me say that, but I find it to be probably one of the most important type of videography and photography because it might not be making millions of dollars like people who, do movies and commercials, but it preserves something very special for two human beings and their children and their great children. And it just feels nice to be able to help the people who help others preserve their family memories.
Absolutely. I mean, that's probably one of the main reasons why we went into wedding videography. There's so many possibilities for videographers to do work nowadays. So basically every business needs videos, but we specifically decided to go into weddings mostly because of that exact reason, to preserve those memories and to do something special for just normal people who will then cherish that video for the rest of their lives. So that's awesome. So I know you also work as a wedding photographer. So maybe you could just talk a bit about how you got into photography in general, but also into weddings specifically.
Yeah, totally. So like anything else in my life, I kind of tend to fall into things. I have this life philosophy where I don't force per se what is going to happen, but I rather let things unfold naturally. And this is a while ago. I had a construction company. I was doing good, but I was really tired of the corporate world, and I was doing good financially, but I wasn't doing very good emotionally. Didn't really want to go to work anymore every Monday morning. It was very draining. It was great money, but it was very draining. And one day an opportunity came about to sell the company. So I happily sold, and overnight found myself, with nothing to do. And at the time, photography was a pretty big hobby of mine. Basically, about a year and a half earlier, my wife, who is a commercial model, suggested that we buy a camera so that she can practice over the weekends by me taking photos of her, and then she can kind of analyze her poses and make sure she's improving. And as I started photographing her, then I realized that I really enjoy photographing. So I started photographing other people and things and flowers and whatnot, and she really fell in love with it. But as long as I had a construction company, it couldn't be anything more than a hobby, because the construction company, kept me busy, pretty much every day from the minute I woke up to the minute I went to bed. And so all of a sudden, when I didn't have all that work, I found myself with lots of time and a hobby that I absolutely loved. And I said, why not turn it into a business? And at that time, I didn't really know I wanted to do weddings yet. So I was kind of shooting everything and anything, whatever would come my way as I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. And then one day, somebody who was getting, I guess you couldn't even call it a wedding. It probably more like an elopement. It was a couple that had like 3 or 4 of their friends, and they chartered a little boat and got married on a boat, and they wanted somebody to photograph it. And I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. Even though I've never photographed a wedding before. And it was absolutely magical. When I was done photographing that little elopement wedding, I was sitting in my car, and I was just thinking, and I knew right there and then that I want to do more weddings for sure. And so I started doing more weddings. And I went, like everybody else, when they're new in an industry, what do? They started looking up education and info. And this is at the time before Facebook and Instagram ads were so big. This is at the time when Instagram ads didn't exist yet. And Facebook ads were maybe 2 years old, maybe a year and a half old. They were very new. Nobody in our industry was talking about Facebook ads. I couldn't find one photographer or one videographer who's even, forget about running Facebook ads, even mention Facebook ads.
As a possibility.
Right, as a possibility. So at the time, everybody was saying sign up with places like The Knot and Wedding Wire. And I'm sure you have similar websites in Germany.
Yeah.
And basically, that's what I did. I listened to what everybody was saying. I signed up. And, I was getting inquiries and I was booking. But the amount of money that I was paying these people versus how much I was booking, they might as well would have owned a portion of my business. I was like, this is insanity. Like, it doesn't make sense that I'm giving away 15 or 20% of my revenue to a website like Wedding Wire. That's crazy. And so I started really looking into what ways small businesses can market themselves. Now, I have a master's degree in business with a minor in marketing, but the things I learned in school had nothing to do with Facebook ads. And as I was looking it up, I found something interesting. I found that people who were creating courses were talking a lot about Facebook ads. And at the time, I had no interest in creating courses or anything like that. But I did find it interesting that these small businesses, usually 1 or 2 employees, were all using Facebook ads very successfully. So I started going to their workshops. I went to probably like 10 or 12 different workshops, to a couple of conferences. And it was so weird because like everybody else at the workshop would be a course creator who's trying to sell their course. And then they'd ask me like, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm a wedding photographer. And they'd be like, why are you here? Like, what are you doing here? And I was just trying to learn what are they doing and then seeing how I can apply that in our industry. And it wasn't super easy. It was actually kind of hard in the beginning because there aren't too many parallels. But slowly I was able to develop my own system of how to use what they did for courses, but do it for weddings, right? And these people were selling courses for $2,000, $3,000. And I said to myself, well, a wedding is about $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. Like there should be a way to take what they do and bring it to our industry. And it took me about a year and a half, but I got it done. And once I figured it out, it was like insanely good. It's just all of a sudden took off. Within about a month and a half, I was fully booked for the year. And then I started sharing like what I was doing with other people on Facebook. And other photographers started trying to do the same, and they were having success. And I'm like, I'm onto something here. Yeah. And so the rest is history.
That's amazing. So looking back, when you were doing the construction business, were you also already looking into those kind of marketing tactics, or were you still using those old school kind of marketing tactics you used back from college, from your master's degree? And how would you say do those tactics differ from the tactics you use today with Facebook ads?
That's an excellent question. And this is something that I didn't realize until like a year and a half into my journey with Facebook ads. First of all, to answer your question, yes, when I was in construction, I was using all the old-fashioned tactics, none of the new stuff that we do today. It was mostly face-to-face marketing. It was mostly what my company did is a high-rise concrete work. So we didn't deal with individual homeowners. We dealt with, either companies that own high-rise buildings or associations. When there's a high-rise building where every apartment is an individual owner, and then they have an association. So it was primarily multi-million-dollar projects where you're dealing face-to-face with people. And the marketing is 100% relationship-based. It's all about relationships. Now, the interesting thing is that when I start my journey in photography, that is not what everybody was teaching. Everybody was teaching, your standard, like, get a good portfolio, do this, do that. And I was wondering, like, if relationships work so well in construction, why don't they work in our industry? And when I started learning from course creators, what I realized is that they do work. It's just the process of building that relationship is different. It's not the same. Like, I can't walk up to you and shake your hand and say, hi, I'm Max, nice to meet you, let's chat. But the whole concept of building a relationship hasn't changed. And so then I started looking back at what I was learning in school and what I was doing while I was in the construction world, and asking myself, how can I take the idea but flip it upside down and make it, implementable in the 21st century with Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and all of that stuff. And so really, if you boil it down to the very, very core principles, they haven't changed. It's the same. Back in the day, the way you market is you would have a good name, you would begin developing a relationship with another person, you would show them that you're trustworthy, and then you would see if they would buy your service or product. Well, it hasn't changed. It's the same thing. You find a couple online, you prove to them that you're trustworthy, you develop a relationship with them, and then you see if they'll book you. So it's the same process, just using different tools.
That sounds so logical, but I bet all the listeners out there will then think, okay, I have to build a relationship with those future couples. But when I'm on Instagram, I only see like this boost post button. So I always hear like, okay, you could try Instagram ads or Facebook ads. So I put a few euros into a post and boost it, and hope it works. And most of the time with the people I talk to, it doesn't really. So how would you then go about building that relationship? Or what would you say is the boost Facebook button even worth it? Or would you say you need to do a completely different strategy, trying to build that exact relationship you were just talking about?
Yeah, that's a excellent question that I'm so happy you asked. So the only time you push that boost post button is when you have too many euros and you don't know what to do with them and you want to just gift them to Facebook. That's when you push. If you're having so many euros and there's no room in your wallet and there's no room in your bank account and you just want to get rid of some, that's the way to go. But generally speaking, I wish there wasn't a boost post button, because it's so misleading. It makes it feel like, oh, I can just click this button and, I spend maybe 10, 15, 20 euros and I'll book a wedding. But that's not true. Sure, it could happen, but that would be like winning a lottery. Like, that could happen as well. But you wouldn't build your financial future and your family's plan on winning the lottery. That would be just, nice if that happens, but you can't plan on that. The problem with the boost post, it's the same problem like you have with video cameras. Think of it this way. When you go to shoot a wedding, if you just carefully think of everything you do to prepare your equipment, to set up, and while you're shooting, how many little adjustments are you doing? Changing a lens, changing your aperture, changing your shutter speed. I'm not a videographer, so my knowledge of video is limited. But I know you need to adjust for lighting. You need to adjust for, your sound, your microphones, all of that stuff. Now imagine if I came out and said, you know what, you don't need all of that. I can just bring this thing right here and my video is going to be just as good as yours. Who needs a DSLR or a mirrorless camera that costs $6,000 or, whatever, 6,000 euros? Who needs all these microphones? And why do you even want to bother with all that editing? Just shoot it on your iPhone. It's the same thing. Your boost post button is like your cheap phone camera. And the ads manager is like your DSLR or like your mirrorless camera. Now, Facebook and Instagram ads work. And, if you ever doubt whether they work or not, ask yourself, why do multinational corporations spend millions of dollars per day on Facebook ads? Surely they're not stupid people. If you want to see how powerful they are, just go Google, European companies that advertise on Facebook and look at the list and ask yourself, are these big companies, do the people that run them appear to be smart? Well, if these smart people are putting so much money into Facebook ads, they must work. Otherwise they wouldn't. And so once you've convinced yourself that the ads do work, then you have to ask yourself, why does it work for them but not for me? Then I must be doing something wrong. And this, by the way, is the process that I was going through. Because the first time I tried Facebook ads, my very first campaign, I spent $500 and I got 0 inquiries. Nothing. I got a few clicks. I got a couple of likes, and that was it.
Well, a few likes.
Yeah, I got a few likes for my $500. I think I paid like $75 per like.
Not a very good ROI, I would say.
Not a very good ROI. But my initial reaction was like, screw Facebook, it doesn't work. But then the next morning I woke up and I asked myself, well, if it doesn't work, why are all these companies paying, so much money for Facebook ads? And at the time, Amazon was advertising on Facebook. So I was like, why does Amazon advertise there? It must work. B&H, which is a huge camera store here in the US, they're still advertising on Facebook. And so once I was saying to myself, if they do it and it works for them, I must be doing something wrong. And so what I realized is you need to craft a journey. When these people first see your ad on Facebook, if it just says like, hey, I'm a videographer, book me for your wedding, they're not going to click it because they don't know who you are. They don't trust you. You didn't come with any recommendations. And social media is full of scams and stuff. So why would they ever trust just a billboard that says, hey, I'm a videographer, I'm offering, 10% off, book me?
Yeah, still give me like thousands of dollars. I mean, a video that's a huge investment. So just giving that to just a random person, that would be, I would say, pretty stupid. You would have to then you would have to trust that person or that company before you give that amount of money to someone.
And it goes beyond money. If you think about it, how many times is this couple going to be getting married?
Yeah, hopefully one time.
Right. If you screw up and they don't get their video because you lost the footage, they'll never be able to see. It's not just the 4,000 or 5,000 euros they're going to be investing in you that you could potentially take and run away. But beyond the money, what if they never get their video, right? Sure. If they value video enough to pay you, 3,000 euros, that means that they value the video a lot more than 3,000 euros, right? Because we never pay more than what we value something. We always want to pay less. So if I'm paying you 3,000 euros for a video, that means for me that video is worth more than 3,000 euros. And so what you want to do is this. Think of it as a relationship. Now, it's a very kind of basic way of giving this example, but I like using this example because it's very easy to understand. If you are married, right, think of your husband or wife and ask yourself this question. If they would have proposed to me the first time I saw them in the first 30 seconds, if literally they walked up to me and said, hi, I'm Max, would you like to marry me? Would you?
Probably not.
But now you're married to them. So what changed?
You built that up.
What changes the relationship, right? In the beginning, when the person walks up to you, you don't trust them. Maybe they're a good person, maybe they're a bad person. But over time, when you get to interact with them, if they repeatedly do the right thing, then you begin to trust them. Better yet, if other people talk good about them, you begin to trust them even more. So think of these two contrasting examples. Example one, I go on Facebook. I have no intention of buying a wedding video. I'm just going on Facebook because I want to spy on my friends. I'm just going on Instagram because I want to see, pictures of pretty models in bikinis. And I open my app and I start scrolling. I'm enjoying my feed. I'm enjoying looking at all my friends fighting over, who is going to be the next president here in the US and laughing at all their posts. And all of a sudden I see a post that says, "Hi, book me for your wedding." Dude, you're just interrupting my fun. Here I was laughing at all my friends posting about, Trump and Biden. And all of a sudden you're interrupting my fun with your stupid commercial, right? I'm just not feeling it at all. Now that's option one. Imagine option two. I'm scrolling through Facebook and all of a sudden I see an ad that says like, "Hey, are you planning a wedding? I have something that can help you. Here's the list of all my favorite venues in Germany." And you're like, "Oh, okay. I need a venue. Why not take a look at what this guy has to say? He works in the wedding industry. He might know some venues that I didn't find." Boom, I click on it. I start looking at the article and it's really good. And I'm like, "Oh, that's nice." So I text my fiance and I'm like, "Hey, babe, check this out. I just found this website of a videographer and he has a list of like top 10 of his favorite venues in Germany. And I think this one is really cool." So now she is enjoying it. I got the content. Now imagine a few days later, I see another ad from the same videographer who says like, "Hey, did you enjoy that list of venues? Well, guess what? I also have a list of photographers to help you. Put your email here and I'll email you the list of all the photographers I've worked with that I thought were really good." Well, again, it's very low commitment. I'm not committing to anything. You're not asking me for any money and you're giving me something really useful. Now, if I take what you gave me and I actually start using it and it really is a good list, it really is helping me, now I start respecting you and I start appreciating you because you've done a couple of nice things for me. Well, now that I appreciate you and respect you, imagine if all of a sudden I start seeing different reviews from couples saying how much they enjoyed working with you. Now you've already helped me a couple of times. You've showed me that you're an expert because you were able to share with me information I didn't know. And now I'm seeing all these other couples who've had you video their wedding and they say you did a great job. Now, if you tell me, "Hey, would you like to book me for a wedding?" If I am able to book a videographer and if I want to book a videographer, I'm likely going to say yes.
That's awesome. It's just maybe to go back a step and explain how we found you initially. So we also did exactly what you talked about first. So we just put out an ad with just maybe a short film of us or like a little post and said, "Do you need a videographer? Here, book us." And then the link goes directly to our website. So that really didn't work too well. So I personally looked around the internet and I came across a podcast episode of you, just like this one, and where you were talking about this. And you were talking about your Facebook group. So for everyone out there who really is interested in exactly what we're talking about right now, you have this great Facebook group named Marketing for Wedding Pros. And there's just a lot of awesome free content. I don't know how many hours, but hours and hours of you just talking and explaining the ads manager and funnels and everything. So everyone should go check that out, Marketing for Wedding Pros on Facebook. So how would you say to someone who started maybe half a year ago or a year ago, they don't have a lot of weddings, they shot maybe like 2 or 3 in their first year, and they're hearing this now and they're like, "Okay, I wanna do this. I wanna try to not only boost the post, but I wanna really build what's really a journey for the future customer, for the future couple." How would you recommend that? And that's maybe the second question, are there actually any advantages for videographers compared to photographers when it comes to Facebook advertisements?
Yes. So if you look into anybody who is educating about online marketing, not just Facebook ads, but any online marketing, pretty much there is one topic that all online marketers agree on. Video is the most powerful tool. Like, this is one topic where there is no arguments and like everybody agrees. Video is the most powerful tool. Now, most businesses that want to advertise with video have to pay to a videographer to create that video for them. And one video could easily be €1,000, even if it's just short, 15, 30-second video. If it's well produced, could easily be €1,000 or €2,000. Now, you guys have an amazing advantage. Your videos cost you exactly zero, because not only you can produce it yourself, but you already produced it anyways for the couple. So whereas if I have a pizza shop, I have to go pay a videographer 1,000 or 2,000 euros to make me a video. You actually got paid to make the video. That would be like Facebook paying me to run ads on their platform. Right? So you already have the most powerful thing to use in Facebook ads, and that's video. All you have to do is just probably re-edit it. Probably the way you deliver it to the couple is not exactly the same way you would use it in an ad. But I've worked with quite a few videographers, and usually we're talking about a quick re-edits that take just an hour or two, not a full-on editing from scratch. And the idea is this: with video, there's lots of stuff happening on the screen, so the chances that they are going to stop from scrolling are exponentially higher. Video is just going to catch your eye in a more powerful way than a photo could ever do. Now, photos have their own reason for existing, but when it specifically comes to marketing on social media, video does prove to be a lot more powerful. And in fact, for photographers that don't have video, I often recommend they put together a slideshow as a video file. But a slideshow is never going to be as powerful as an actual video. So yeah, you as a videographer, out of every vendor in the wedding industry, you are in the best position to run ads on social media because you already have the raw material ready to go. It's just a matter of properly putting it together. Now, really, there's two separate halves to this success story. If you want to have a success story, part one, you need to understand the psychology of marketing. What I just spoke about, creating a relationship, putting the right material in front of them. That's part one. And if you don't understand it, it's going to be hard to be successful. But even if you fully understand it, you still need to know which buttons to push on the Facebook manager, ads manager interface, and what app to set up, how to set it up. So it's a pretty complex tool, probably as complex as one of the fanciest cameras you can find out there, or maybe even more complex. And so really, I'm going to say this: don't just jump into it without first learning. There is a ton of material available on YouTube. There's a ton of material available in my group for free. I think there's like roughly about 35 hours of content, completely free. And the content is divided into both of these halves. Some of the content is just conversation explaining the psychology of marketing. The other half of it is literally me sharing my screen, showing you which buttons to push and explaining what every button means, right? You don't necessarily just want somebody to tell you, go push these 5 buttons. What you want is somebody to explain to you what everything does and how it works, so you can decide for yourself which buttons are the right buttons to push. Because not every campaign is going to be the same, right? You might have different campaigns during, different years, during different time of year, depending on what you need. But 100% understanding how to market yourself on social media, right now, Facebook and Instagram are the biggest. Tomorrow, there may be a different platform. But if you understand how it works, when the new platform does come around, it won't be hard to learn. It will not be hard to readjust. I initially learned specifically on Facebook. Now, I also got certified by Facebook. But then, once I felt like I really had Facebook mastered, I said, well, what's the next one in line? What's almost as good as Facebook? And the answer is YouTube. And so off I went to learn YouTube. And what I discovered, and I'm talking specifically about YouTube ads. Mm-hmm. I do not do organic YouTube, not because it's bad. It's great, but it's just not what I do. I'm an ads guy. When I went to learn YouTube, I realized something really interesting. Even though it's a completely different platform and it works differently, a lot of the things that I knew from Facebook I could apply over there. And so the learning curve was much shorter. If it took me about a year or so to really get to a good level with Facebook ads, it took me only about 2 months to accomplish the same progress on YouTube because a lot of the material applies. Mm-hmm. And as we're moving to the future, it's not going to reverse itself. We're not going to be less online. We're going to be more online. The trend has been the same since the 90s. We've only become more and more addicted to the internet. So I doubt we're going to be less addicted to the internet in any foreseeable future. So the place to start is Facebook ads and Instagram ads for sure.
Would you recommend, for people who probably don't know what a Facebook pixel is, would you recommend people putting that on their website right away? Or you can explain what a Facebook pixel is, what you need it for, and then also why it would make sense probably to go ahead and put it on their website, even though they're not running any ads?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the thing. Even if you're not running any ads right now, and even if you don't have any plan to run ads, things may change. You may change your mind. Now, Facebook has a thing called Facebook Pixel. And other platforms have similar things as well. Basically what it is, it's a little piece of code that goes on your website that can then recognize Facebook and Instagram users and funnel that data over into your account. So for example, if you open Facebook on your computer right now, chances are you don't need to sign in. You're already signed in. What that means is that when you originally signed in, Facebook left a little file on your computer called cookies, and it's just a text file that identifies who you are. So when you go back to Facebook, the website doesn't need to ask you for your password because the file on your computer is like your badge. It's like your ID card, right? So if I have a Facebook pixel on my website and you have that little cookie file on your computer, when you come to my website, the pixel immediately recognizes who this person is, which one is their Facebook account, and keeps it in their file. If you decide in the future that you want to advertise to people who've been to your website, you'll already have the data. And if you don't have the pixel, you'll be starting from scratch. And starting from scratch sucks.
Yeah.
So the pixel is free. It doesn't cost you anything. And, since you're a wedding business, you don't have any sensitive information on your website. You don't keep people's bank accounts or stuff like that. So there's no reason not to have it on your website. And it's a really, really powerful tool that will create a lot of information. Now, think of it this way. Imagine the following thing. By the way, I'm going to give you a statistic here that I know to be true in America, but I'm going to guess that it also is true in Germany, because after all, humans tend to be very similar no matter where you go. So in America, if you look at analytics for websites of wedding businesses, you're going to find something really, really interesting. Can you guess when is the busiest time for wedding websites during the day?
I would have guessed probably more in the evening. I would have guessed when you're home from work, you snuggle up on the couch and you pull up your phone and then you kind of browse together. But when would you say is the most busy time?
Right. So I actually, not only from my own ability to analyze websites of the people I coach and my clients, but also just reading somebody who've done a really deep dive into this and showed a lot of data. The busiest time is between 2 p.m. and 5 p.m. This is like the last 3 hours of the workday. And if you think about it, it makes sense. You've been working hard all day. You've already had your lunch. You're tired. You don't really want to work anymore. And shopping for your wedding sounds a lot more fun than writing another report for your boss. And so a lot of people browse wedding websites in that afternoon time. The problem with that afternoon time is that, and by the way, this is just one example. There's a million reasons why you should have a pixel, but this is just one example. Now, the problem with that afternoon time is that if a boss walks by and I'm on your wedding videography website, I'm going to have to close it pretty quickly because I don't want to get fired, right? So imagine this scenario. I'm at work. I go on Google and I type wedding videographers in Düsseldorf, just for example. And your website comes up. I know you're not in Düsseldorf, but it's the only city I have family.
Just for the sake of it, let's just take Düsseldorf.
Right. So your website comes up, and I look at it and I'm like, I really like their video. I really like these guys. But then my boss walks by and I quickly close my browser. Now here's the problem. I don't remember your name because I was only on your website for 45 seconds or maybe a minute. I didn't remember your name. So now I'm like, what was the name of those guys that I really like their video? Now I go back to Google, but I don't remember exactly what I Googled. So I start Googling and I can't find your website, right? I remember roughly how it looked. So I spent about a minute clicking around and I can't find your website. Now, what would happen if the next time I go on Instagram, I saw an ad that says, hey, I noticed you were on our website, but you didn't finish inquiring. Come back and inquire. Now, I wouldn't necessarily retarget the entire website that way. That could be a bit too vague. But what about if this person was already on my inquiry form, right? I could, using the pixel, I could have a list of everybody who come to my inquiry form, but didn't finish filling it out. Now, that's a powerful ad to put out. Because if you were on my inquiry form, that means you wanted to inquire, but you never inquired. So putting an ad in front of you saying like, hey, come back and inquire is something that will work tremendously well. Now, granted, you would need a certain amount of traffic to accomplish it. You would need at least 100 people on the list. But if you get at least 200 inquiries a year, then Facebook allows you to keep data for 180 days, half a year. If you get 200 inquiries a year, then 100 inquiries will get you a right-size audience. And even if not, there's other ways around it where you can, artificially inflate the audience a little bit just to get to that 100 people number. But this is just one powerful example. Imagine this. Imagine being able to identify who actually likes your style by identifying the people who've been on your website the longest and then showing ads only to them, right? Mm-hmm. If I spend a long time on your portfolio page, that tells you I've been watching a lot of the videos. And if I'm watching a lot of the videos, that tells you I like your style. Maybe you should advertise to me. All of these things cannot be done without the pixel. Now, maybe you'll never advertise on Facebook, and that's fine. But one day, if you do decide, if you've already had a pixel that's been sitting on your website for a while, you'll be able to jump right in. And if you haven't, you'll be starting from zero. Now, if you have a WordPress website or a Squarespace website, installing the pixel will take you literally like 45 seconds. It's super easy. And if you want, in my group, there's a video that shows you how to install the pixel. You can literally put it on one screen, open a browser on another screen, and just follow along with the video, and you'll have your pixel installed. Now, if you have a show it website or a custom build website, it's still pretty easy, but it does require very basic, coding skills. All you would be doing is taking that little piece of code of the Facebook pixel. It's literally like 6 or 7 lines of code. You'll be copying and pasting it into the header of your website. But that's only if you have a custom website. I would imagine the majority of the videographers would either have a WordPress website or a Squarespace website.
Yeah, I think most of the German wedding videographers, I think, use WordPress actually. Flow Themes is very popular here. Squarespace, as far as I know, isn't as big as it is in the US. So I figure it must be easy for everyone listening. Go get on Facebook, go get a pixel on your website. So I really wanted to talk to you about websites as well, because I know when we did our first mentoring session, we also talked about my website and our website, Dennis and my website, and we kind of analyzed it. So maybe you could talk a bit about website structure, maybe also about a story brand, that book by Donald Miller. Everyone check that out as well. So maybe you could talk about that for a second.
So yeah, first of all, Jan, I wanted to tell you, you should, in the notes of this podcast, put the link to that book. It's called Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And no, I'm not affiliated with him. I don't get any commission when he sells his books, but this book is revolutionary. If you remember in the beginning, I was talking about you need to build a relationship. He, in this really short book, I think the book is only like 180 pages, and they also have it in audio. But it's a really, really short. I think I got the whole book in 1 or 2 days. So it's really easy to understand. But he, in a very beautiful way, explains how to build that relationship through telling a story. Now, stories are extremely powerful. And seriously, dude, we could spend the next 2 hours talking about the power of stories. But basically, put it this way. If your brand, if your website is not telling a story, it's going to be very, very hard for you to book business. You have to be telling a story. Some of the most successful brands, think of brands like Adidas, like Nike. Why are they so successful? They're so successful because they're telling a story. And if you think of brands that are less successful and kind of die out, they don't necessarily tell a story. Go get that book. Well, seriously, guys, you will thank me. It'll be the best 10 or 15 euros you spend because it will open your eyes to how much you're doing wrong on your website if you're not telling a story. Now, a lot of us make our website all about 2 things. Number 1, here's my videos. Number 2, here's who I am. The problem is nobody cares because the couple is not buying your video because of the video, and they're certainly not buying your video because of who you are. Now, you might be an amazing human being, and by the time you're done working with a couple and you deliver the wedding, they might become your best friends and they may absolutely love you. But you have to remember, the first time they come to your website, they don't know who you are, and they're not coming to your website because they want to know who you are, right? You're not a celebrity. They're not coming to your website because they want to find out who you are. They're coming to your website because they have a need for a wedding video. And so your website needs to be structured in a way that it creates a journey. And literally think of it this way. Right now, your website is like a billboard that has a bunch of videos and some info about you. What your website needs to be is like a garden. And when the couple comes in, you take them by the hand and you literally give them a tour, right? So it needs to be structured in a certain flow. Now, there are entire books written about that flow. But one thing I can tell you, once you read, the story, building a story brand book, you'll start to understand. But basically, what it is that needs to be on your website, and I'm going to explain it in a very basic and high level way, because obviously we can't spend the next 5 hours talking about websites.
Sure.
But this is what needs to happen. Number one, when they land on your website, the first thing they need to see needs to be emotional, not logical. You need to start their emotion going. And that emotional thing needs to be about them, not about you. If you won 17 awards being the best videographer in all of Europe, nobody cares, right? But what do they care about? Well, they care about themselves. Unfortunately, it doesn't matter how long evolution has been working on us, we still are self-interested beings. Just like a cat and a dog and a tree, our number one interest is us, is not the society or some strangers. And so when we go to a website, when a website says right away, hey, I know what your problem is, and I understand you, that immediately captures the attention. Mm. So the first thing they should see is you saying out loud what their problem is. Now, most likely they may not even know what their problem is, but you being able to verbalize it to them is going to catch their attention. The next thing that should be on your website is you need to tell them that it's okay. You're not the only one, and a lot of other people have had the same problem, and I have a solution. And then you need to give them the emotional side of the solution, right? So I'll give you 2 examples. Now, this is probably going to strike a better chord with some of your older audience, because the younger might not even remember what Zune is. Do you know what Zune Player is? You remember those? Microsoft Zune?
I think so.
So back in 2001, Apple came out with what was called the iPod. And it was essentially this device that you could put music on. Up until that point, really you had 2 options. You had a cassette and then you had a CD. But both were pretty problematic because how much music could you put on one cassette? How much music can you put on one CD? And then how many CDs can you bring with you wherever you're going, right? At the time, Walkmans were very popular. And so Apple came up with this device that you could put digital music on and bring it with you. I know today it doesn't sound very revolutionary, but back then it was huge. And Microsoft immediately came out with a device called Zune. Mm-hmm. And in a way, it was actually better. The difference was that with the Apple device, you were restricted to only using their software, and you couldn't replace the memory inside. Whatever size hard drive you had inside the device, that was your limit. Whereas the Microsoft Zune was much more open to put whatever MP3 files you want, and the memory sticks you could remove and put a new one. So you could essentially have a much bigger music library. A better device, no question. Yet only a few years later, Zune is gone. Nobody even remembers what they are. And iPod still exists. 2 decades later, it still exists. People still use it. A lot of people have it on their phone, but you could still buy an iPod if you go on the Apple website right now. And so one must ask, what's the difference? Why is that the Apple iPod survived and thrived and the Microsoft Zune just, disappeared into the history books? And the answer is very simple. When Microsoft was marketing the Zune, that's how they were marketing it. They were saying, this is a device that has 32 gigabyte of memory, and it can, it could play the file at whatever speed, and they would give you all this technical stuff. And how was Apple advertising it? They were saying, iPhone, 1,000 songs in your pocket. They weren't talking about how much memory it has. They weren't talking about anything technical. They were talking emotional. Put 1,000 songs in your pocket. And that's why they survived. It's a very big difference. And it's the same thing with weddings. If you're telling couples all the technical stuff, like, we shoot with the best cameras and you name the cameras, it's not going to ring a bell with them. But if you're telling them on the emotional level what it is you're going to solve for them emotionally, you're gonna book like hotcakes. And your website needs to be built that way. It needs to talk about their problems, giving them emotional solutions first, then giving the technical aspect of it, and only then describing who you are. And when you describe who you are, you describe it in terms of how you're going to help them, not in terms of, here's an example of a good about me section versus a bad about me section. A bad about me section. Hi, I'm Max. I like ice cream and I love pizza and I have a 2-year-old daughter. And when I'm not shooting weddings, I love to hang out with my daughter and, do stuff in our garden and plant different vegetables. That's bad. Nobody gives a shit. Excuse my language. Here's a good example of an about me section. Hi, I'm Max, and I've been shooting weddings for an XYZ number of years. I love shooting weddings because it allows me to help the couple preserve the most important day or one of the most important days of their lives. And, one of the biggest compliments I've gotten from a couple was when they said that the video that I shot made their grandma cry because, joyful tears, because she couldn't attend the wedding, but when she watched the video, she felt like she was there. I still told you about myself, but I told you in terms of the couple who is reading it.
Yeah,
that's what they care about.
That's mind-blowing. And it was very, very mind-blowing for us because I think we all really tend to think that we just have to basically sell ourselves kind of to the couple without really actually trying to understand their problem. And a lot of people really have to think, okay, what's the problem? I mean, they need a wedding video, but the problem really is that they want something to just capture what happens on that day forever, that they can remember all those memories forever, watch that again, listen to the voices of their loved ones, or maybe when their children ask them, how was your wedding, mom? They can just show a really nicely produced video. So that's the problem, really. But we tend to just start with us, with our work, and our website isn't perfect by all means, but we definitely improved, I think, a lot after reading StoryBrand and after working with you. Yeah,
absolutely. If you are going to be a good storyteller, you'll always make money. Good storytellers always make money. Just think of it this way. You can do a little experiment on yourself to see how powerful stories are. Read a fact, like a statistical fact, and then go to sleep. Then wake up in the morning and see if you remember that fact word for word versus a story you read a few years ago. So when I teach in live workshops, I often do the following experiment, and it always works. I've yet to be at a workshop or a conference where I was speaking, and it didn't work. In the beginning of my presentation, the first thing I do is I put on the screen a slide with the official definition of the word marketing as defined by the American Marketing Association. And it's just like 1 or 2 sentences. And I put it on the screen, and I let people read it, and then I move on. And then about an hour later, at the end of my presentation, I ask people, if you can repeat the definition that I gave you 1 hour ago, raise your hand. And usually, like, maybe one person will raise their hand and nobody else. Usually the one who's taking all the notes, be like, I can repeat it. And I'm like, no, put your notepad away. Can you repeat it from your head? And usually the hand goes down. Nobody can repeat it, only 1 hour later. Then I ask him, okay, raise your hand if you've ever watched Lion King, the original one. And, people will raise their hand. And I say, okay, if it's been more than 1 year since you watched the movie, then keep your hand up. Otherwise, put it down. And most people keep it up because it's been more than a year. And I say more than 5 years, more than 7 years, more than 10 years. Usually, like, when I get to about 10 or 15 years, there's only going to be 1 or 2 people still with their hand up. I say, great. So you, ma'am, you watched the movie, 12 years ago? Yes. Can you tell me the story? And, she'll tell me the story because, who doesn't know the Lion King story? And so I ask her, I say, how is that something I showed you 1 hour ago, you can't remember, but a movie you watched 12 years ago, you can tell me the story now? And it's because it's a story. Our brains are not made to remember facts. They're made to remember stories, which is why if you look into every religion, I don't care if you are Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, name any religion. If you look into the religious books, they're full of stories, not facts. If you open the Bible, it's full of stories. If you open the Quran, it's full of stories, and so on and so forth. It's because that's how our brain works. If you look into every good ad on TV, really good ad, it tells a story. Think of any movie that you really enjoyed, a movie that really captivated you. It's usually a well-told story that has this basic structure of a hero, a journey, and a guide. And I'm not going to spoil the book for you guys, but just remember, a hero, a journey, and a guide are 3 ingredients that must be on your website.
Yeah, and we are not the hero as the videographers. We're the guide, and I think we all have to keep in mind that. And now going back to maybe the ads, I think that just to sum it up, so you would probably just recommend people to obviously go check out your Facebook group, because we get a lot of people saying like that the boost post a feature that's easy. The Facebook Ads Manager, it's so difficult, and I really have no clue which button to press and everything. So you go over all of that. So you should be settled after you check out that, and try to create something of value to the couple, and don't just sell yourself right away from the get-go, but try to, like you said, maybe write a good blog post about, the best 10 DJs in your city, and have like nice descriptions and links to their website, which will also then maybe connect you to new vendors in your city, which is another bonus. But give that to them, and then, as we talked about with the Facebook pixel, retarget them with maybe some download where you can get their email, and then you can contact them again and build a relationship there. So it's more work probably than the just normal boost post, but it's what works.
And I just want to say it is more work, but only up front. Yes, it's gonna take more work to set up your ads, no question about it. Like anything good and quality, it takes work to build it, right? But the good thing about ads, you invest a lot of that work up front, and then you don't have to work as hard. And I'm sure you've seen it in your own setup. You work really hard in the first couple of weeks, but now you're probably working a lot less on your ads. Yeah,
sure. I mean, if it's set up, everything's written. If the emails are written and everything, if your ad copy is right, if you've created your little freebie or download, did your research, obviously, because the most important thing is not just getting their email, but not providing something of value. So you should really try to really dig in and maybe interview people. What would you really need? What really would have helped you during your process of planning your wedding, and then trying to create something for that need. And sure, it's a lot of work in the beginning, but it pays off. And obviously, I think it's something we can just learn from the big players, as you said, from the big brands, Adidas and Nike, and whoever's doing the same tactics, obviously on a bigger scale with more budget. But those things are exactly what they are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. There's so many amazing tools that literally once you learn them, there won't be a need for you to go anywhere else. You will not need any websites like Wedding Wire, because you'll be self-sufficient. And if one day you decide you don't want to be a wedding videographer anymore, well, guess what? All these skills, they're portable into another industry. I use the same skills to market my own wedding photography business, and take it from in the beginning just charging like $1,000 a wedding to then charging $10,000 a wedding. But when I start marketing online courses, I'm using the same skills. And if one day I decide to go do something else with my life, all these skills are going to be portable. So it's not like you're investing into this one thing that you may not use. This is a skill you're going to use for the rest of your life.
And you can even then, teach people later on, as well as you do, obviously, right now. I think you have done a course in the past, are there any plans for the future of you maybe relaunching that course where you just go even deeper than the knowledge you give in your Facebook group? Or
yeah, absolutely. So I do have a course that I closed a little while ago because Facebook just had a major update in all of the UI. And while the videos in my group sometimes will look a little different, all the buttons are still called the same names. They may just be slightly in a different place on the screen. I didn't feel like it was right to sell a paid course for something that had a different UI now. And so I took down the paid course. I still left all the free videos. Also, the other problem with the paid course was that it was only for wedding photographers. It did not include any strategies for videographers. So now I'm actively building a new course that's hopefully going to be out very shortly. And this new course is, number one, going to be, of course, on the new Facebook UI. So everything looks the same on your screen and on the video you're watching. But I'm also including, for every example I bring, I'm bringing an example for a photographer and a parallel one for a videographer. So the course can be more inclusive to the two main audiences that I serve.
I'm just very, very, very happy to have had you on. And are there any things you just want to say in the end? Obviously, the name of your Facebook group is Marketing for Wedding Pros.
Yep. Yeah. So the name of the group is Marketing for Wedding Pros. If you, for some reason, can't find it, just go to marketingbymax.com, and there's going to be like a big button in the middle that says "Take me to the group." And my goal is, when I release the course, for everything that I teach in my one-on-ones to be in the course. The only difference is when I do it one-on-one, of course, I tailor my examples and everything for your specific business, whereas in the course, it's going to be a little bit more general, but the idea is the same. And really, also, if you are just kind of stumbling around your own way, I don't want you to feel like, oh, if I didn't buy any course, I can't ask questions. For everybody who's in my group, people know, like, you can ask a question and tag me in it, and I'll answer. As long as I know the answer, I will answer gladly. So don't feel any pressure to have to buy something or pay me any money. Just go into the group, watch the free videos, get started. And if you have any questions, just post them in the group, tag me in the post. And if I know the answer, I'll give it to you, as soon as I can. But yeah, don't wait until, you have money to pay somebody. Just get started. There's so many resources even available for free that you don't have to wait until you are able to buy a course.
Yeah, that's true. 100%. I can attest to that. You care so much about helping others. And you, I think in the end, when we did our last call, you also said that you could make way more money, like doing different stuff or shooting weddings or whatever. But knowing that you helped, like, a small business make more money, or book the next year, like way more in advance, or be booked just in general, that's what really drives you. And that really comes through in your group whenever we talk, whenever someone asks something in the group. And really, really awesome. Yeah, thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Das war die heutige Episode mit Sadik. Dieser Podcast war einfach vollgestopft mit Wissen von ihm und vor allem praktischem Wissen, was man direkt umsetzen kann, und Gedanken, wie man mit den Kunden kommuniziert und wie man sich selbst darstellt, und ja, viele, viele weitere Dinge, über die man wirklich mal nachdenken kann und die mich auch selbst zum Nachdenken angeregt haben. Falls du dem Podcast noch nicht folgst, würde ich das jetzt auf jeden Fall nachholen. Dann wirst du auch jedes Mal benachrichtigt, wenn wir eine neue Folge hochladen. Wenn dir diese Episode gefallen hat, würden wir uns total über eine Bewertung auf Apple Podcasts freuen. Danke fürs Zuhören, macht's gut.